Lieutenant Hank Marlowe lands with his parachute on an island in the South Pacific in 1944, after his aircraft crashes. Gunpei Ikari, another soldier, arrives. Marlowe pulls his rifle and fires but misses Ikari. Ikari pulls out his revolver and pursues Marlowe. They flee into the woods and fight. When they get to a cliff, Ikari almost impales Marlowe with his blade, but Marlowe snatches it away. Ikari then pins Marlowe to the ground and almost kills him until a massive ape hand appears. The monkey then rises over the two guys. In 1973, government official Bill Randa and geologist Houston Brooks come in Washington, D.C., to speak with Senator Willis about financing for an expedition to Skull Island, a newly found site. Willis is opposed to the plan, but Randa persuades him to reconsider. Randa informs Willis that he would also like a military escort before departing. The Sky Devil Squadron has assembled on their penultimate day before returning home. Colonel Preston Packard leads them, along with Captain Earl Cole, Slivko, Relis, Glenn Mills, and Jack Chapman, Packard's right-hand man. Packard receives the expedition call and enthusiastically accepts the position. Randa and Brooks travel to a pub and hire James Conrad, a former British Special Air Service commander, as their tracker. Conrad is accosted by two bar guests who accuse him of cheating in a game of pool, but he easily subdues them. Randa is immediately impressed and informs Brooks that they have found their guide. Conrad meets with Randa and Brooks to discuss their strategy. When he hears their offer, he wants more money and points out that the trip is likely to result in their deaths due to harsh weather or dangerous beasts. Mason Weaver, an anti-war photographer, is processing photographs she captured during the Vietnam War in a darkroom. She receives an invitation to join the expedition and arrives at the base to meet with Packard and his troops, as well as a team of scientists from the business Landsat, including Brooks' colleagues San Lin and Landsat staffers Victor Nieves and Steve. Weaver is concerned about the mission and believes the military is plotting something nasty. Brooks explains the objective and what they hope to discover on Skull Island. Before boarding choppers to the island, the squad cruises into the water. They must pass through hurricane-like clouds, but they are able to identify a high-pressure pocket that they feel would be a safer route. The choppers fly across the region after a tumultuous passage through the storm. Weaver shoots images as the military begin to dump seismic charges into the earth, causing explosions. A tree is pushed through one of the choppers almost instantly, bringing it falling to the ground. The group suddenly notices Kong looming over them. He choppers another tree before grabbing a couple more and bashing them into the ground. When the survivors hit the ground, they are divided. Packard glances up at Kong, who looks back at him from among the flames that had erupted from the ruins of the choppers. Packard confronts Randa with a gun and demands to know what got them here. Randa says that he has known for a long time about the existence of creatures like Kong, and he is looking for confirmation for his organization, Monarch. Conrad, Weaver, Brooks, Lin, Slivko, and Nieves are gathered together, while Randa, Packard, Mills, Cole, and other troops go in search of Chapman, who has enough ammo to use against Kong. As the troops proceed through a bamboo jungle, one of them comes to a halt. A bamboo tree has impaled him through the mouth. A massive spider appears above them and begins attacking them. Mills is dragged up by the webbing, and the other troops begin chopping off its legs. Packard shoots the spider to death when Mills rips himself free. Chapman is alone beside a river. He notices Kong strolling through the river, tending to a wound caused by the chopper's gunfire. Kong sips from the river before encountering a massive octopus. He wrestles with it, fighting off its tentacles before beginning to devour it. The octopus carcass is then dragged away by him. A local tribe has cornered Conrad's troop. As they strive to protect themselves, an elder Marlowe appears. He promises both parties that they will not hurt each other and then welcomes them past the barriers. Marlowe tells the group that he's lived on the island for 28 years and has learned a lot about the locals and the island itself. Kong is like a god to them since he has been defending them from the animals who live beneath the soil and have been murdering off the inhabitants, as well as Kong's own family. For millennia, they are referred to as skull crawlers by Marlowe. They remained beneath until the seismic charges exploded, waking them awake. If something happens to Kong, the skull crawlers will take control of the island. He also claims that the skull crawlers that have surfaced are juveniles and that a much larger one exists. Chapman, still alone, travels into the forest and rests on a log. The log is shown to be a massive bug. Chapman fires at it, but it does not react. Chapman is slain by a skull crawler as the beast flees. Conrad informs Marlowe that they intend to reach their rendezvous spot on the north side of the island within 3 days in order to be rescued. Marlowe says it can't be done in 3 days on foot, so he offers to lead them in the proper direction. He bids the Indians goodnight and boards a boat with the crew. Nieves is caught up by carnivorous birds and ripped apart midair shortly after riding away. Along the way, Weaver comes across a massive water buffalo trapped beneath a downed helicopter. She tries to hoist it up to rescue the buffalo, but Kong appears and pulls the helicopter away. He momentarily looks down at Weaver before walking away. She looks more awed than afraid by him. The gang is led by Marlowe into the Forbidden Zone, a previous fight between Kong's ancestors and the skull crawlers. The massive bones of Kong's family are scattered throughout the area. When a skull crawler emerges, the gang is forced to flee. Conrad observes the skull crawler spitting up Chapman's skull and dog tags. Packard and his guys are in the same neighborhood. Randa is photographing when he is kidnapped and eaten by a skull crawler. Another beast appears and begins to assault and draw victims in with its tongue. The struggle with the skull crawlers and a wave of carnivorous birds continues. Marlowe pulls out Ikari's sword and slices through many of the birds before giving it over to Conrad. Weaver kills one by putting a lighter into a hole, causing gases to ignite and set fire to the beast. They regroup after the combat. Packard is still on the hunt for Chapman. Conrad displays Packard Chapman's dog tags as proof of his death. Despite the protests of Marlowe, Conrad, and Weaver, Packard wants to find Chapman's ammo store so that they might kill Kong. He is hellbent on vengeance for the murders of his men. Packard gathers explosives and sets up a trap for Kong that night. Meanwhile, Conrad and Weaver come across the beast, but Weaver approaches him with caution. He is kind as she lays her hand on his cheek. Packard, on the other hand, draws Kong toward him. The troops turn against Packard, who continues to defy them. The gang is forced to flee as the largest skull crawler breaks from the ground. Packard stays behind to set the bombs off, but Kong smashes him with his fist. As the big skull crawler chases them, the surviving flee to the shore. Cole remains behind to commit suicide with the explosive devices he has attached to himself. The monster, however, tail whips Cole into a wall and he blows up nevertheless. The skull crawler advances on the group until Kong appears and slams into the beast. Kong attacks the beast with a ship's propeller linked to a length of anchor chain, eventually slicing it on the throat. The beast isn't dead, and he's back. Weaver pulls out a flare gun and fires it at the skull crawler in the face. Kong grabs the skull crawler and throws him against the wall, throwing Weaver into the river. Kong drags Weaver out and continues to fight the skull crawler. He smashes his hand down the monster's neck, yanking out its intestines. Kong then leaves, leaving Weaver next to Conrad. The survivors, Conrad, Weaver, Marlowe, Brooks, Lynn, Mills, Slivko, and Relis, board the boat shortly after, and 3 choppers arrive to pick them up. Kong keeps an eye out in the distance to guard his domain. He lets out a shout as he pounds his fist. As the credits roll, we see video of Marlowe eventually going home to Chicago, where he sees his wife for the first time and finally meets his adult son. He then settles in with a hot dog and a drink to watch a Cubs game. Following the credits, Conrad and Weaver are being interrogated by Monarch in an interrogation chamber. Brooks and Lynn enter the room and inform the two that Kong was not the only monster out there and that this world did not always belong to humanity. Brooks takes out various files, including a Tokyo map, before launching a slideshow. The images show another team discovering cave paintings of numerous monsters, including Mothra, King Ghidorah, Rodan, and Godzilla. The final sounds we hear are Kong and Godzilla roaring together.